Okay, it looks like we're back up. So welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting. For our work today, we decided we wanted to try to see if there were other areas where we could reduce costs from our current budget, which is showing a deficit, and reconvene with suggestions as to what areas we might be able to, again, reduce costs. Before that, though, I thought we might try to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, which has not formally been done yet. They were circulated prior to the council meeting and everyone had a chance to look at them. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And then Alan was the second. Okay, all right, great. So in an effort to try to save time, I will relate to everyone. There were a few large areas that were identified by various council people to just look at throughout sometime during the year, because most of these things involve contracts or they're large expenses for services. And because they are rather large, the thought is maybe we could go back to those vendors and strike a better deal or find a different provider. And that's up to the administration. But some suggestions and others may come through the year. One was the cell phone service and cell phones. Another was there were a large number of computer expenses, and whether or not the computers could be serviced by someone else or maybe less service. And again, there hasn't been time to do investigation. We had the opportunity with COVID funds to buy a lot of laptops, and perhaps some of those costs were related to getting those up to speed. So, if that's the case, it won't be as big a number this year. Jeff had pointed those two things out as potential low-hanging fruit that we can work on. And there will be others. I just use those as examples. Nothing that can be solved here in this meeting, but identifying things that we can look at through the year and see if we can get a better deal either with the current provider or somewhere else.
Can I ask a question, Mike?
Yes.
On the deficit that we have, you had given me a kind of a percentage of what we're going to have to save. Was it 2-3% off of everybody's capital budget? Is that what we're talking?
Well, in order to try to close that budget gap, recall that the deficit is about $100,000. Recall there is a 3% holdback from Hamilton County, and they do that because there's concern that not all the property taxes would be paid, and we experience very few delinquencies. So that number is about $54,000. So we end up with $46,000, $48,000 deficit if we want to be bold and consider that we won't experience that 3% loss. Then if you round that to 50,000, then you say on a $2.5 million budget, you got to save 2% in order to try to close that budget gap, so to speak. And that would need to come from operations or the equipment line shown on our capital spend. The larger items that are paid out of EPGI will not help our budget deficit if we were to eliminate any of those. One other concern about the ones coming out of EPGI, for instance, the police body cams and car cams, those are the types of things that if we don't do it this year, we're just going to kick the can down the road, as Don pointed out. And those are things we definitely need. So it would need to come from the smaller equipment line. I will offer one example and then look at, I sat down with Tom Alderfer, since I'm streets and public works, and I'll offer a couple of the things that he and I came up with. One of his items in his equipment line were park benches. I did mention the snow plow because that's a pretty high ticket item, but you can't live without a snow plow. And so we went ahead and said that stays. But on his park benches, he said that there are no benches by the police station and the green area there. And likewise, it would also help to serve the nice area that we've created with our the improvement funds for the parking lot over there. So there are no benches in that area, and he'd like to have one there. And there is a bench in Lake Park that he's repaired so many times we can't repair it anymore. So he said, "Can I have 2 instead of 4?" And what do you say to that? We could cut out all 4, but I think it's logical to have a bench to replace the worn out one at Lake Park and to put one over by the green area of the police station.
Mike, excuse me for 1 minute. There are 3 new benches that his guys created along the new walkway. Are these different benches than what you're talking by the police station? Are these different benches than those?
That would be different benches. Now, I didn't go over to look to see what's there.
Yeah, he did. There are 3 benches. In fact, the train watchers use them. They've moved them up against the new sidewalk, the new brick sidewalk.
Okay.
I can help out with that. Those are the 3 benches in the parking lot that we rebuilt with new wood and new bolts. So we transferred them to the new sidewalk.
So we don't need a bench there.
So maybe we don't need a bench. He said he wanted one by the police station.
And we have
Yeah,
3.
This would be on the other side of the street, folks, by the police station, not the parking lot.
But it's in the green space right in front of the.
Right in front of the police station.
Yeah, I mean, we can take one of those instead of 3 and put it. I mean, we don't. If we're getting down to the little nitty gritties here.
Well, if council pleases, that's the direction we can go.
I think everything should be on the table.
I see. Well, if we want to get that granular with it, we can certainly do it. Tom will do what we ask him to do. We could move one from the new walkway area down by the police station, and now
problem solved.
One new bench.
And so what's the savings on that?
It's about $1,000
Okay.
for one more bench, so maybe 3,000.
Okay.
I would like to make sure that the new bench is not intended to relieve some of the pressure that the mayor's court is experiencing because people can't come into the court to wait for their case to come up. So they have to wait outside. Not everyone can stand around indefinitely. The existing 3 benches are far enough away from the court that, I think would be inconvenient. I just want to make sure we're not compromising the ability of the mayor's court to work. That I would say, let's follow up on this, but I would urge that we not take it out of the budget. It's virtually nothing. And if we save the money down the road, great.
Okay. So in the interest of time, we'll give it back to Tom to say that, could we do without it? But he was pretty adamant that he wanted it. And so let's move on from there. Other areas that I worked on with Tom tend to be mainly related to utility, gas and electric.
Right, before we leave the bench matter, were you discussing the parks budget?
I'll get to parks. I will get
Okay,
to that.
I'm sorry. I was trying to follow you to see what the net impact would be.
That was just one of those kind of capital items. But let's go with each of the Tom Alder for budgets, starting with streetlights, and I'll be as fast as I can. and only slow down if somebody needs me to or wants me to. For streetlights, the largest amount of the increase he's looking at is for gas and electric. Then he said that the gas and electric continues to rise and he wants the budget for that. And he thinks that's an appropriate number. Looking at where that's gone over the past couple of years, I think he's right on target. So we leave that one alone. No changes there. Traffic signs. These are traffic signs and traffic signals. He has reduced some of his maintenance kind of stuff on here, and is less than a 2% increase from last year's budget. His concern, though, is if we have something with a signal, that's like when you call the plumber and you pay the fee just to have them come out. So a traffic signal is, you're writing a check just to get the electrical people to come out and look at it. So he doesn't want to change that budget. I agree with him there. There's the difference between what was budgeted last year and this year is $100. If anything, I think he's a little thin. His next one that we reviewed was parks. Again, gas and electric has an increase. And then going through the rest of it, we see that there are some that have gone down. A larger increase is in the equipment line. And that one is for items that he needs. And we don't have very much room to change there.
Mike, is that the new mower? Is that where the new mower fits in?
No, the new mower is coming from VPGI.
So $6,000.
Well, reduce that by 2,000 because we're only going to have 2 park benches instead of 4. So that one will reduce by $2,000.
But even so, they've not spent even $1,000 in the past 3 years. And last year, $700, $770. I'm looking at the line that says 6,427.
Yeah, and that's just trying to keep things as close to the tight of a budget as possible. If we take away the park benches and some new garbage cans, which he says he needs, if we take that away, that line would go down to, he wants a new backpack blower, but that line would go down to $500, $1,000 instead of $700. I mean, if the man can't buy garbage cans, I mean, it's the thing there. The big thing there is the benches, and I think he would like to get those. So that could go down by 2,000, and I quite frankly don't know how he's gotten by with what he's spent on equipment in the past. The next one on his list is storm sewers.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
Wally had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wally, I didn't see.
Well, you're still on the topic, but I wanted to offer something while you were on topic of streets. Note that under street maintenance, which I think you touched on the snowplow for the 2020 Chevy K2500, correct?
Yeah.
That amount is $6,747. I'll refer you to miscellaneous budgets, item 4, which is 202 State Highway, has $38,500 reserved in it. This is a special revenue fund that we reappropriate all the money that the state gives us from gasoline license plate taxes. And we're to use that money to maintain roads, to buy equipment for trucks to maintain roads. And I would offer to the committee that we can take that line item out of the general fund and put it in the state highway fund, which has $38,500 available to it.
Okay. What
Well-
other things would that state highway fund take care of? Because I brought that up to Tom and he was reluctant to do it. But-
I spoke to him a few days ago. He thought that was a good idea. So maybe there's some confusion about what he was talking about.
Okay,
But it is a qualified purchase because we're only allowed to spend state highway money for the
for
main,
state roads.
for State
okay.
Route 4 or for 747.
Okay. Does he have anything else he's got to do to State Route 4?
He typically uses the state highway, and I use it as well, of course, because he works for me. But we're buying salt and
Salt, yeah.
and salt spreaders, and I would argue that a salt snow plow would equally be qualified. It certainly has been in the past.
Okay. Why don't we try to circle back with Tom on it? I'm for it if it works.
Okay, we can bring it back. It is a qualified purchase. I did research it, but I wanted to offer that. It's a
Okay,
larger number that helps out.
okay.
And that would impact which line item in the general fund summary?
We're not to it. We're not quite to it yet, but we'll get to it and I'll point it out again.
Thank you.
Okay. Right now, looking at storm sewers, there's no increase there. The way that goes is he tries to manage that as best he can. We have some old culverts and things, and if they collapse, his budget is totally shot. So I suggest we do not try to reduce that. That's been a steady number for a long time, going back $9,100 and now $9,260. Refuse, very little room in here to do much of anything. Most of this is our contract with Rumpke and salaries. This one is not. There's another one that had a health insurance thing. The fuel and lubricants line on page 2, we spent 9,000. He's drawing that back down to 7,000. Where else? Let's see. Vehicle maintenance is going to go up slightly. And I cannot argue that. I think the money needs to be there in case the transmission goes out or something. He's dealing with some vehicles that are 15, 20 years old. And the rest of it, the increase falls within the 2% guideline. So we really didn't try to change any of that. The next line we looked at was street maintenance. One of the larger bumps in there is a health insurance number. We didn't probe deeply into that. I'm sure it's an employee that's taking health insurance that didn't, or something like that. And another item on here was fuel and lubricants. That went up slightly because he used more. And he feels like street maintenance will use more fuel and lubricants than before. And then let's see, here is the equipment line that you asked about, Marilyn. 79 on the spreadsheet, 2521 is our account number, equipment, and that is where that snowplow is. Now, if we're able to put that over into the highway funds with the $38,000 balances Wally suggested, we can take that out of, and that would be a savings of $6,000. At that point, we'd fall within the suggested 2%, that combined with this health insurance piece. So Wally, how would you suggest we do that? Should you go back and talk to Tom?
I did on last Friday, and he was on board. It's something the administrator does determine where that equipment comes from. We've done it in the past. And
okay. When I was quizzing him, maybe he was asking, maybe he thought I was saying get rid of it altogether versus move it.
I could see him objecting to that right now.
Yeah. So let's say we'll do that one. So that will move out to that Road Fund 202 State Highway Fund. So there's roughly 2,000 on benches and roughly 6,067. The total of that would be about a 9,000 savings.
$8,971.
Okay. You were faster than me on the computer.
I'm
That
taking notes because I imagine we'll have to change some of the budgets.
yes. I think there's one more area of Tom's, and it might be the public buildings, which he and I talked about that while we were sitting there. And bear with me while I find it.
While you're looking, do you show the garage doors? My old report still shows them. We've already received a grant from
Yeah.
council.
Does that fall under VPGI? It
I
does.
think that was VPGI.
It does.
Yeah, we'll just have to make a note to remove that.
But public buildings, for whatever reason, I can't put my hands on it, but I'll tell you what's going on there from memory. If you look at the public buildings budget, it's the same except for a $5,000 item. If you're looking at it, gee, I wish I could find it.
Mike, it's after the clerk's budget.
After clerks. Let's see if I can get to it. Thank you. After clerks. So here's clerks. Clerks again. Public buildings. There we go. So on public buildings, he's got a very tight budget all the way along, even reducing in some areas from what he spent last year. The one piece is on page 2, it says other repairs. So you see there was nothing, well, $98, and then there was $4,625. That was our clock down in the village square to be repaired. So now there's 5,000 for the budget in next year. And I argued that the clock probably will not break again, but then Tom indicated, we're just one air conditioner failure away from spending $4,000 again. So I can't argue with that. To not have some number in there for repairs, unexpected repairs, it seems foolish. So we let that stay in. So I was satisfied with that one. Other than that piece, again, he falls within a very small increase. Utility is another number that's gone up a pretty good amount in public buildings. One suggestion from him and from other council people is that we look at utility usage and try to assign those things to the appropriate department. So that'll be something we can look at. I think, for instance, the police building is paying for its gas and electric through the police department budget. And he would like to make sure that all the other budgets are aligned that same way. Combined with that, I think we can simplify the bookkeeping world if we've got like one bill, but then internally just assign to the different funds an appropriate utility amount. So not to solve that today, but that was just something he brought up since utilities keep going up. So that was a conversation with Tom. In addition, I will relate to the rest of council that he felt like he did as good a job as he could to keep his budgets under control and try to stay within the guideline of 2% that we had asked for. And he, along with others, agrees, I'm preaching to the choir. The solution here is to not keep cutting. We're going to have to find some revenue sources so that we can, soon we'll be cutting even more services, and he doesn't want to see that either. So that's it for Public Works, and Will, I got your public buildings in there too.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Any questions on that part of it? Okay. Are there other areas that people want to discuss or look into?
Yeah, I want to talk about the police.
Okay,
Dave and I went over that pretty carefully, and really the only slop that I ever could see in there was the bicycles. The thing about the bicycles, though, when a patrolman's riding a bicycle, he's not driving his car. So the savings far outweighs the price of the bicycle. Dave, am I correct? He's sitting there, I can see him in the,
in the eyes of the IRS, at 50 some cents per mile to operate a vehicle, yeah, the savings is probably there.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is correct. I mean, the bikes are used even in the wintertime around on the bikes alone. There's no ice and snow. They use them at night shift when you guys are sleeping, and they can get around pretty quick on those. It's just an alternative, outsource that we have.
And
And the ones we currently got the ones we got now are about 10 years old. So I mean, they're getting to the point where either, maybe not this year, but definitely next year. We keep pushing them back in our 10-year plan. We pushed them back, I know, at least 3 times,
yes, I
or
know.
2 times that I'm aware of.
I just wonder, Dave, instead of buying bikes, can those be rebuilt?
Well, we have them serviced every year with new tubes and tires and brakes.
Mhm.
That's just an expense just because they're getting old. I don't know if they can be rebuilt. I've never looked into it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because what
It's more
happens
so
on
the
a
frames
bicycle,
on them. I'd have to have, I've never had them checked, I guess, as far as the frame and stuff.
Yeah,
Or if they're,
yeah, you can take a frame and put new pedals and gears and everything on it a whole lot cheaper than you can buy a whole new bike and do that. But I think that the expense for the bikes is minimal. And other than that, his capital was well within the 2%. In fact, I think it's less than what he had the year before. So I'm gonna just say that if we can do what we can do with that, I'd leave it alone.
Okay,
Are we on police right now?
Yeah,
Okay,
why not?
okay. Tell me, it appears that just the salary line, not benefits, but just the salary line shows an 11% increase. What explains that? If we're all at 2%.
Where do you see 11?
On the general fund budget sheet. It's the 1, 2, it's the 4th sheet in.
okay. Part of that is our reduction in monies from the Proctor Fund for the SRO officer. Probably a good part of it.
It's all of it.
I have the numbers if you'd like.
Thanks, Wally.
So there's 2 reasons why the payroll is up 11%. I'll start with a smaller one. Last year, the police committee authorized 2 additional part-time police officers at 900 hours per year. That cost is $47,502 to add those 2 additional part-time police officers based on their projected budgeted hours worked per year. The second reason is the school resource and crossing guard. The Proctor Fund reduced our payments to 60% as of last August, carrying into this year, and then August of this year it drops to 40%. The school resource increase on our budget is $43,000, and the cost for the crossing guard is $13,300 for a total of $56,300. The total increase is $103,000, and I'm sorry, $103,802.
Okay. So that's how that increased.
Well, the hardest thing is that, the SRO was funded by the Proctor Fund. And our agreement with them is that eventually we'd take over that burden. And I think everyone who's involved with the SRO program thinks it's very critical and important. And I can't
Let me
think-
just say, I agree that the SRO program is a very good one. It also is popular with the residents. I will say there was never an explicit agreement that we would take over the program once once their funding was reduced or expired. That was a decision left to us. I think probably there were people on the Proctor Fund board who kind of thought if we took it on, we would keep it going. I'm just going to say I was there was no explicit agreement.
Is it time to discuss whether the SRO should go halftime? I mean, there's a significant savings there. Not saying wipe them away, but that's a big chunk.
Well, what I would like to do is give the chief the opportunity to he and I have talked about this already as to whether right now the SRO fund is essentially one dedicated full-time police officer. And the chief and I have talked about whether there are other ways to fulfill that responsibility that would be more efficient for the budget. Give us a chance to work through it. Right now, we're halfway through roughly the expiration of the grant. So we have some time to look ahead and see what the possibilities are.
Mayor, do you recall if St. Gabe's was ever approached? If the St. Gabe's school would ever consider paying for a part of that?
I can
I
answer
would be
that.
very surprised if St. Gabe's had any money to pay for that program.
Mhm.
My understanding is that I go to St. Gabe's. I hear things. The school it's a good school and they're doing their best, but no, there isn't any extra money there.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, so let me, if I've got this right, for 2021, the SRO combination salary and benefits, based on David's wonderful calculations, thank you, 64,213 and 21 cents, so $64,000. And that is for full-time?
Yeah, he's full-time throughout the school year at 3 different schools. So he splits his time there at all 3 elementary schools. And in the summertime, he's back on the road doing whatever, covering shifts or whatever.
So does that $64,000 compensation package include his work as a police officer during the summer?
Yes, it does. It's
The
all one big package.
Nancy, I want to point out too that if we're looking at the same sheet, that 64,000 figure is the budgeted amount for the SRO fund, the special revenue fund. The 106 number is the total package split between the police and SRO.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right. So
Yeah,
that, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can finish your sentence.
Well, my sentence is, so now, it's, should we look at part-time once more? Should we look at part-time? And the mayor said you're going to do that. Yes?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's unfortunate that we've gotten into discussing in open public meeting the compensation of one employee. And I would hope that we refrain from focusing in on the salary level of one particular employee and refer to employees in departments as either a group or a segment of the department, but not one individual.
Yeah, I agree with that,
I
Marilyn.
agree.
The only reason we put out the SRO kind of package is because we were being helped out with his salary. That's the only reason we would make a difference, okay?
So let's move on from that. Any other input on this on this department, I guess. Okay. Is there any other ideas, suggestions, any other departments at this point?
I can tell you that fire, we were unable to get together to even talk about this. The chief is out, not well. The chief is out sick.
Okay. Okay.
And
Any other
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm so used to calling on you, Don. Mike Bessel is chair of this committee meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Mike, I do have a question in the fire department line item 2111, volunteer pay. I
Yeah.
know we have a number of volunteers,
Mhm.
and the 2021 budget versus the 2020 actual is over $38,000 difference above what we actually spent.
Okay.
through
I can help with
December
that.
20.
David said he can help with that. So David?
So that reduction as well, and it's not as noticeable for obvious reasons because the police is so much more, there's so much more salary there. But those are the expenditure reductions put in place using the CRF funding for coronavirus relief. That funding was split between the police and fire departments to reduce their annual salaries when we did that at the end of November. So that's why that number reflects as low as it does.
Okay.
In a normal year, 52 would be accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
David, a follow-up, where did the money go that rolled out of the general fund that wasn't used since we offset it with CARES money?
That's currently sitting in our general fund reserves.
Starting balance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other
And we
thoughts?
look at
Yes,
other
go ahead, Marilyn.
other communications on line 23, item 2329. In the 2020 budget, we had $2,400 budgeted. We only spent $230. And yet in 21, we're budgeting $2,400. Can someone please explain that line item? It is line 20, it's account number 2329, other communications. On page 1 of the fire department.
Mm-hmm. I see it. There was nothing, and then there was 2,400. Then 230 was actual, and now 2,400 again.
I'm wondering if that 230 reflects once more, whatever this is, COVID funds. It could be PCs, could be radios, could be, I don't know. I'm at a loss without the chief here.
Okay. We do have a large amount of money allocated to radio replacement, so I don't know if it would be radio. I don't know. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I went back through the check register for the last couple of years and noticed that we spent about $48,000 in the last couple of years for turnout gear for the fire department, and budgeted another $16,000 this year for turnout. I don't know myself what the life cycle necessarily is and how heavily turnout gear is used, but that's would come up to what, 48, 58, $64,000 in turnout gear in the last 24, 36 months. I wonder if it's possible to perhaps reduce not necessarily the the cost of each item, but having to replace fewer of them on a different schedule. Rather
Good
than,
question.
Do we know which line item, which account number the turnout gear appears on the budget? We have several account
Thank you.
numbers.
It is in the equipment line. And then,
25, 21.
yeah, it's in 25, 21. And then if you want a further breakdown, it is on the second page of your packet under column F, equipment. If you follow that down to fire, you'll see the turnout gear at 16,000 and communication equipment at 10,000. So I don't know if that can be reduced or not. My thinking has always been if there were fewer volunteers, you'd cycle through less turnout gear. I don't know how many volunteers there are. And I don't know if we can utilize fewer volunteers.
Mike, the chief mentioned, because I mentioned that before, and he mentioned that the turnout gear has a finite life.
It does.
And he has that on a rotating cycle.
Mhm.
It says, this is what I need for the number of volunteers that I have and to maintain their safety and the efficacy of their outfits and everything else. It needs to be replaced by some standard.
Right. I've heard, he told me this, he's mentioned to me the same.
I mean, it is one of the, I guess, a disadvantage of having a volunteer department that people circle through for relatively brief periods of years, that we have to get new turnout gear when new people come in. At the same time, the volunteer system that we have is very efficient for us overall by not having to pay the salaries that a professional force would require.
Well, I think actually the turnout gear can be handed down, so to speak.
Yes.
And I believe the newer members get the oldest gear.
Yes.
But my thinking is if you have, you'll cycle through more if you have more volunteers. So if we had fewer volunteers, could we get by with less equipment? So, and that probably cannot be answered today.
No, I will promise to speak to the chief on that.
The other is communication equipment at 10,000. My only question there is, we were replacing radios at a certain clip, and I think there were a finite number of radios, or we were replacing radios that had gone missing. I don't remember which. And we've been doing this for a number of years. I don't know if we're close to the end of that, or if we'll need to continue replacing radios going forward. I know it was a question of a Motorola versus a different type, and the different type was better. And so we were trying to transition through to the newer type. And I didn't know if we're getting close to the end of that road.
Mike, I think the chief mentioned there was a point of obsolescence with some of the radios that they had.
Okay.
And that the radios that they still had could not be maintained and serviced. That was part of the discussion. I think similar to what we have with the police department.
Okay.
And the technology was shifting as well. That factored in, I guess.
Mike Bogrand, do you know if that's then, do we need to consider 10,000 a year for the next several years?
I have no idea.
I did have a brief conversation with them a few months ago. Hamilton County is upgrading their technologies. Half of his radios are capable to be upgraded to meet the new requirements of Hamilton County, so they will work. The other half will not be upgradable, so they're obsolete.
Huh. Is this a new system in the last year or so?
I believe so. Chief Warman may know more about that. He has to upgrade his radios as well.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
we've been on a kind of a 7, 8 year replacement plan. We've been replacing one every year to keep up with the new systems. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to require as far as upgrades. I'm pretty sure our radios are newer, so we shouldn't have any problem upgrading ours. Just whatever the bandwidth is, whatever they do when they tune them up or whatever. I don't know. We'll be okay.
Are yours similar, Chief, that in cost that I see county radio at 2,500 on your line? Could you surmise he's probably doing 4 of these every year if it's 10,000? Are they that similar or?
Yeah, we get them from Kenwood, and they're a lot cheaper, but they work great.
Do you know, Chief, if the fire department goes to the same vendor?
I'm pretty sure they do. I'm
Wally, would
almost
you know on
positive.
that? I mean,
I believe
Yeah.
they do. I think Kenwood is the brand he uses.
Okay.
Interstate radio, wherever.
I just don't know how many he's ordering, but I guess he's leaving a placeholder for.
I mean, I would just hope that we're getting some family discount on that by combining the two departments, but I'll look into it.
We do get a government price. That's of some help.
That's
Yep.
good. Anything else? Any other cost reduction ideas? Across the
Yeah,
board?
Mike Bessel, I have a few questions if you might,
Okay.
you or Wally or David might know. If you go back to clerks,
All right.
do you account 2392?
Clerks, is clerks after mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So 2392. Okay.
So that payroll has jumped pretty substantially, that payroll cost since 2017.
So the increase that's built in for 2021 is to account for an upgrade for our utilities, public works, police department time clock upgrades. Actually helps us on 2 fronts. First of all, it catches us up to using more modern technology through our payroll vendor. It also helps us in the administrative office as we're reduced by a person next year to process payroll with a little bit less work time. It digitizes all time worked and requests for time off. So it helps streamline that process for us. So there is an increased cost associated with that upgrade. And that's built into that 2392 line.
And this is a one-time upgrade, right?
This would be an ongoing price that would go along with our payroll processing fees. It covers the online software access and upgrades to the time clocks as we would get into a service agreement with the company where we would not buy the clocks outright. We would actually lease them with the company. They would be responsible for any kind of repairs, upgrades, changes, those sorts of things, as opposed to buying them outright at a couple $1,000 a clock.
David, that's dumb question here, but that's more economical than using a Paychex or an ADP or a Paycor.
This is with Paychex.
Is a lease actually less expensive than owning the product? I mean,
It is, because the lease not only factors in the upfront capital costs of buying the clocks, but it also negates the need to purchase a service agreement. So they build that price into the lease, as opposed to when, if you buy the clock outright, you have to pay additionally for the service agreement to receive service and upgrades on the devices.
Hey, Dave, is that something that's coming out soon? Or
Well, depending on how things go tonight, hopefully sometime this year, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I sure like
didn't know anything about it. All right, thank you.
I sure like the column L 2017 price at 9,000, better than 22,000. But I guess the 9,000 is just all by itself, and you buy the clocks and the equipment, huh?
Yes, and this was something that I'd been looking at moving us over to anyhow. And it really was sold for me when we had to order new time cards for the clock at the Public Works Garage. And they told us that those cards were a legacy product and that they had to special order them from the printer. So I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to continue that. So if we can upgrade, I think it's worth doing.
It is worthwhile. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, Mike, when you're ready to move, I'd like to discuss the mayor's court.
Let's do it, but I think Will might have had a couple of other things. Did you have
Sure.
more, Will?
Yes, there were a few, and there were a few departments that did and some that did not, that offer that the sick pay buyback or I guess it was just sick pay buyback. So some offer it and some don't. Do you know where we stand on that? Because I know in about 2014, we got rid of that entirely.
I don't know.
I never remember that. Well, then again, 2014, I wasn't around in this capacity, but some departments have it built in. It's based on how much sick time is available for each employee, whether or not they qualify for it. They have to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 960 hours, I believe, is the benchmark. So that's based on whether those employees qualify for it, the dollar amount, what it would be for them to sell back their time.
What he means by qualify is years of service.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, but when we were running that huge deficit before many of us were here, the sick pay was one thing, but we did not want it where they would be able to cash out and get paid for unused days. So, and that was with sick pay and with comp time as well.
I don't.
Do you recall what's going on there then, Wally? And I have no idea.
The only buyback that we've done since I've been back in 2017 is up to 2 weeks vacation pay, is by the ordinance. But as far as sick buyback, the only time sick time is paid upon is when an employee calls in sick for an 8 or 10 hour period, and we use that line item to pay him versus the normal line item for normal pay. But sell back, no. As I understood, in 2014, that option was eliminated.
Okay, it might just be like, no, I just had it in front of me. There was one department that had sick pay, a line for sick pay, and then a line for sick pay buyback. So
No.
I don't know if they could.
Yes, well, it's the police department.
Right.
If you look at row 4, there is sick pay, and if you look at row 8, there is sick pay buyback.
Okay. But Chief, they can't cash out missed.
No. Yeah, we can. That's never changed. I've been here for almost 30 years, and every officer or anybody from any department has always been able to cash out their sick time each year. And what it is anything over 960 hours of unused time, because we can only carry that much on our books, we can cash out. Basically, it's up to 60 hours of time that's reimbursed to the officers. And that's basically most likely a reward for not calling in sick and then using people for overtime to replace it.
And it's reimbursed at half the rate of hours available. So if you turn in, 100 hours, you are only paid for 50 of those hours.
Right. And like when we leave and retire, you can, the most we're allowed to cash out is 960 hours at 50%. So it'd be 480, I guess it is. 900, whatever 48 times 2 is, 960.
Yeah.
And so the village will make out, half of that back, I guess you could say.
Let me ask a question here, Chief or Wally, with sick hours. Are the sick hours carried over from year to year?
They are.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is there a maximum number of hours that may be carried forward or accumulated?
No, there is not a maximum number of hours that can be carried forward, but there is a minimum number of hours that you have to maintain if you do participate in the sick buyback, and that's 960.
And because the police department has so many officers that are older, they've accumulated that time over their career.
Yes.
Do we have that obligation recorded someplace in the numbers reported?
Yeah, I'm sure that's an ordinance.
I mean, if we have an accumulation over 5 years, for example, do we have that number somewhere as a potential obligation of the village?
Yeah.
Sorry,
It is an obligation.
it is. It's
A potential, it is an obligation.
it's an obligation listed in the employee handbook.
And do we have a balance? If I accumulated that for 5 years, that would be a substantial number. Do we account for that in
Yes,
the balance sheet?
each employee gets 120 hours a year of sick time.
Mhm.
And that's accumulated 4 hours every you get 4 hours every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
Mhm.
accumulate sick time.
The question is there the money to pay for the accumulated sick time over the time? So it's not the
And-
hours, it's the money to be able to cash out, $50,000 one year for several employees or something.
That would be a question I wouldn't know the answer of. But if someone was suddenly to retire, I'm sure they had that somewhere that the village does, so they can cash that out when they retire.
I mean, the village does pay out upon retirement for balance of time, but sick time is only paid out for retirees. It's not paid out for employees who just decide to switch jobs or go into another
Right.
profession. So if
That is
someone
correct.
retires, their sick time is paid out, and if someone moves to another job, that sick time theoretically could get carried over with them to their new employer, but we don't want that.
Okay.
So
Let me just point out that the sick pay and also sick pay buyback dollars are in the street maintenance budget as well as in the clerk's budget. It's not just the police department.
We do have a few employees across different departments that are eligible for sick buyback.
Okay. So I would suggest we might be able to get into this more if there's interest to dig into this more to find out if the village has proper reserves to take care of obligations under this sick pay buyback or otherwise. And let's move on with trying to reduce costs right now with the budget. Will, did you have any other ideas?
Mike, my last one was Mayor's Court,
Okay.
line 2349, other professional fees.
Okay.
That's up about 50% in 4 years. I just wondered if that's a possible cut or if that's something locked in.
That'd be a good question for Don or Wally, I think, or David.
I believe.
I know that our magistrate fees have gone up based upon our previous magistrate that retired was only charging a certain percentage and never raised his rates. Our new magistrate costs a lot more, though she does a wonderful job. And that's where those fees come out of.
Okay, my understanding though of this other professional fees line is that it's for translation services.
That too.
We
Court.
regularly we're getting more and more people coming
Yep.
in who are not able to participate in the proceeding in English.
Right.
And we have an obligation to ensure that it's our legal obligation if we're going to run this court to provide them with translation services. And I'm
Right.
pretty
It's
sure that's why that budget line item
Jail fees
time to
is another
time
one.
increases.
Yeah, jail fees, when when the magistrate send someone to Springdale, let's just say for 4 days, 5 days or whatever, those fees come out of that line as well as any kind of fees associated with the lab downtown for drug testing, alcohol testing. Anything we send to the lab, those fees come out professional, that line item as well. There's a lot that comes out of that particular line.
And so which line item does the magistrate's fees come out of that the chief was speaking to earlier? Is that line 3?
Professional fees.
Or salary?
Salaries at the top, chief.
Salaries would be Sandy Schilling and Steve Quarters, the clerk, comes out of that. I believe Laura comes out. I don't have my file. Well, maybe I do. Hold on 1 second. I can tell you.
And Will, that's a police officer. Portis.
Okay.
John Smith, or the
No relation, I might add.
magistrate fees comes out of a line 2349. That's where we take our magistrate fees out of.
Well, that's the one that Will was speaking to earlier.
Okay, so that would be,
Okay,
so the language must be, the language issue must be 2399, I would guess, miscellaneous.
Professional fees, no, that the interpreter comes out of the same line as our solicitor. Or our magistrate, they come out of the same. Our solicitor comes out of payroll itself because she's actually a paid employee.
Okay,
okay.
okay, I'm done. Thank you,
I'm
Mike.
sorry, she's a paid employee? Is that
she is.
salaried?
She's on the
Or is-
mayor's court, yeah. She
Or
goes
is that other professional?
hourly. She's an hourly employee.
So then but it's not up in the salary line in line 3.
No, she's paid out of 2111 salaries.
Okay,
So it is line 3.
Yeah, it is.
Wait a minute, is she, which she now? Is it the prosecutor or the magistrate?
Sandy Schilling.
Prosecutor.
So
We were
both.
talking about the magistrate.
Magistrate's paid separate out of line 2349.
Got it.
I'm going to ask this question. Is there an opportunity to reduce cost here? Because I don't think we need to dissect the entire mayor's court budget and find out which account, which individual is being paid out of which account. Is there an opportunity to reduce cost is the question.
Well, that is, and that's why I wanted to understand the dollars and what they mean, because line 38, as Will was speaking of, has gone up over the actual what we paid so far in 2020.
Well,
Now,
like so many things, the reduction in 2020 was due to COVID and the fact that we didn't have as many mayor's court sessions as we would normally have. So I think you have to jump back to 2019 for a comparable year, and that's pretty close to what we're budgeting for.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we went 3 months without even having court, so.
All right.
I only
And
have
believe
one
me, that's
other.
not something we want because quite frankly, the mayor's court more than pays for itself. So we want as many sessions there as we can get.
I have one other question. It's just 1.4,
Okay,
$1,400, but it is line 52, membership fees. For the first time, we're anticipating $1,400 in membership fees, distinct from other membership fees?
I had a question mark on that as well. So what is that? Can someone tell us?
The membership fees cover several different areas. I don't have my actual paperwork with me. Obviously, I've been out for a while. So I can't break it down, to be honest with you, off the top of my head.
Okay, we'll
I don't
look
believe
into
I
that
increased
and
it.
find out where that came from. Chief?
I appreciate your honesty, Chief.
Yeah, I've been out for 3 weeks, so.
Right.
All right.
I only raise it because in the mayor's account number 701, we also have membership fees of $4,200, $4,200. So
Yeah,
I
have a
just
question
wanted,
about that as well.
yeah.
Right, because that's
At
a,
Mayor's Court. It
Yeah,
could be our
it's not
computer.
mayor's
Now,
court, it's
this is in the mayor's budget.
mayor's budget, 701.
right.
And
So,
it's line 54.
So would
Yes.
that, Mr. Mayor, would that by any chance include Queen City?
Could be.
I don't believe so. I know David and I talked about this a little bit. We thought that at least for one more year, we were content to leave it at the higher number, bearing in mind that, let's say in going back to 2019 actual, it was up at 34. Before that, it had been as high as 4,000 for actual. So it's obviously something that that fluctuates.
Yeah,
And these are fees that people pay, I guess, for professional associations and other things that
Okay.
are an essential part of the work that they do. I know the village belongs to the OMA, Ohio Municipal, OML, Ohio Municipal League, and some other things. I keep my subscription up to the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association just because I get a lot of good information out of it that is relevant to the work in the village and understanding our legal situation.
Can I ask then where Queen City fees fit in? Is it from the community fund, which I know can't touch, but do you know where the Queen City fees?
I have no idea.
don't know that off the top of my head. But I do know the mayor is correct. Membership fees are professional organizations, ICMA, OCMA, and the like that I frankly like to be able to continue to participate in because they do give us a wealth of resources and trainings and
Sure.
those sorts of things.
Wally, do you know where Queen City fees are?
No, but I'll find out in the morning with David. Jeff signed a PO for it for 2021 yesterday, so I'll grab the PO and see which account it comes. There's so many, I don't recall which one of these.
what is that for, Wally? Is that to help offset costs for Glendale residents?
It is, initially it started out with so that every employee, particularly the fire department, which needed to have a resource for physical fitness.
Hmm.
So they threw in the rest of the employees. We negotiated a rate of $1,700. Oh gosh, 8 or 9 years ago, we're still paying the same amount.
Okay.
We were able to add on getting a half price membership to all residents. So the bundle was $1,700 per year.
That's not too bad.
No, yeah, I thought it was higher. Sorry.
Okay. Any other thoughts, ideas?
There's actually two fees. There's the one for residents and the ones for employee. So overall, I think it's close to $4,000.
4,000.
If that's the case, then we ought to take a good look at that. With a small percentage of residents.
The combined both, Mike, for resident offset plus employee is
Yeah.
about 4,000.
It's close to that. Employees, I think it's like Wally was saying, $1,700 by department. And then for resident, I think it's a flat fee of $2,000 or something like that.
Okay. All right.
That's at least the checks that I've been signing.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Any other input areas where we can reduce?
I have a question,
Yes.
and that is, there is a service we pay for called zoning enforcement. And we spend $600 a month or so for that. I don't know which budget that comes from. And I don't know how many citations are issued each month, but is that an opportunity to become a part-time service or a reduced number of hours?
I can,
Mr. Cordes has some input, I think.
Well, I'll yield to David. He knows the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so our code enforcement officer is a one-time-a-week employee who goes through the village and cites residents for violations of our property maintenance code. His salary or his fee, because he is a contract employee, is paid split between the police and the public buildings funds. Now that public buildings is unable to cover him, we are moving him to police until such time we can resume that 50-50. His services, I will say at $600 a month, are a tremendous savings over other contract organizations that do the same service. So I think he presents a tremendous value to the village and is very well known, I think, in the village, and is well liked and does a good job for residents resolving complaints and issues that they may have.
Right. We look for compliance. We don't look for citations. That's the biggest key with Dick. He does a great job as far as keeping the residents informed, as well as they keep him informed of their progress. Not everybody has the means to make improvements that some do. And he works with them and follows up with them. And, you know, it takes a lot of pressure off the police department as far as, you know, in different areas.
One of the other things that Dick does that I was very impressed with over the last year or so is he works very closely with the Hamilton County auditor, and has connections within that office, and was actually able to hunt down some folks who were delinquent on property taxes. And he worked to make sure that those accounts were brought to the auditor's attention and they were pursued and corrected. So I think he brings tremendous value to the village at the price that he charges.
Okay.
So is the $600 per month a retainer, and then we pay him per citation or per work that he does? What's his cost?
He bills hourly, and I believe $600. Wally, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's his average or typical rate.
That's correct.
Okay, so on average, he costs us about $7,200 a year.
Yeah, it's not very much.
Not very much. Okay, anything else? Any other thoughts, ideas?
I got a couple. Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Okay. I had an idea, maybe, I hate to say this, but I thought about perhaps garbage pickup every other week instead of once a week. I know that's not going to be happy and whatever, but I don't know, and I don't know how much money it could save us. We ought to look into that. Because I don't know anybody that generates enough garbage for a weekly pickup.
We may be able to look into that in 3 years when our contract expires, but right now we have.
I think I can get that taken care of.
I think maybe also worthwhile noting and looking into alternating weeks for recycling collection, because I have experience with that, and Rumpke does typically provide that, so that might be an opportunity for some savings.
You know, though, my recycling is overflowing and my garbage fits in my garbage can, so that I don't know how well that would work.
You're just a little too environmental for the rest of us, Mike, I think.
Buy another garbage. Another can, Mike.
Too many people consuming too much beer.
I have I'm sorry, Alan, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Speaking of trash, I had a question about refuse. And if we could look at that department or that fund 507.
Okay.
Row 27, which is account line item 2314, recycling. The cost of the expense of $46,000. How are we distinguishing this expense in the general funds versus the refuse expense and the expenses associated with the trash tax in the enterprise budget?
I can help a little bit with that. We are billed separately for trash pickup versus recycling. So we get two bills each month. They add up to $148,000 and $48,000. And I believe, David, correct me if I'm wrong, is the entire residential garbage within the 148? I know some of it goes to a few dumpsters, but
Yeah, I think that's about right. And they are split, and the revenues are split when we receive them.
yeah. So we recover exactly what Rumpke bills us just for curbside recycling and garbage pickup.
Mhm.
You see the small print, Marilyn, on the line item above it, which should be item 26.
It says landfill and disposal, residential garbage.
Mhm.
There you go. 99 or 98% of it's residential garbage, but we also have a few dumpsters that we have at the landfill that's included in that bill, but we don't charge residents for that.
Okay.
I'm also aware when we went through this contract with Rumpke, the question was asked, what if we don't do recycling at all? And the answer was basically you're going to pay almost the same amount because we have to pick it up. So, you know, to remove the recycling really didn't save us.
Yeah, that's correct. They go by tonnage, actually, on the end game. It's all about tons. So recycling takes tonnage away from waste, which lowers the price, but then recycling costs the same amount, if not more.
They actually lose money on recycling when they pick up for residents.
Yes, they do. It's
Who told
amazing.
you that?
What's that?
Who told you that?
Rumpke at their recycling center.
That's what Bill tells you, right?
There's one of you born every hour. They don't do anything that's not profitable.
Hey, Alan, Bill's granddad was just an old pig farmer.
I guess
He
so.
didn't know anything.
He didn't know nothing. No, they make money on recycling. Don't.
Who knows? Who knows? All right, let's focus on cost reduction for us.
I got
What else
to
do you
come
have,
back to
Nancy?
chair.
Yeah, they do that for a public service, Mike.
Yeah. Nancy, what have you got?
Okay, I have two things. First, looking at David's, back to that David's spreadsheet, it appears to me as a category, administrative employees as a category, there is an $88,000 reduction from 2020 to 2021, $88,000. Am I?
I'm not following you.
I'm not either.
David sent out late today a spreadsheet on salary and benefits summary.
Yeah, okay.
And there is a class within this. If you look at the bottom,
Well, I want to make sure we don't talk about,
we're not,
like we got on the border of individual salary and that.
we're
sort
not,
of thing.
I'm not, no, we're not. I agree with you. I just noticed that from 2020 total to 2021 total, it's down $88,000. What explains where that is?
So let me help with that, Nancy. Some of that, actually, I would argue a pretty good chunk of that is, pardon my dog barking in the background, is present in the enterprise fund. So it's outside of the general fund, as those employees, all four of those employees are split between different general fund accounts
Got
and
it.
enterprise accounts.
So that's why. All right.
But that doesn't represent all of it.
Well,
Correct?
it doesn't, but if you look at all of the departments on that spreadsheet that David put together, you end up with a deficit, or not a deficit, but an increase in expenditures from 2020 to 2021. It's an overall increase.
Okay. I haven't been able to dissect this sheet. It just came out not even an hour ago, or I haven't even had it for 30 minutes. But so Don, I understand what you're saying. It actually increased a little bit.
Some departments that increased, some departments decreased. And in the end, the increase was probably about what you would expect.
Huh. Okay,
Well, then that brings me to, can we talk about the enterprise fund for a minute?
sure. I guess,
Um,
Jeff, are we allowed? Okay,
There, it looks as though the enterprise budget, water and sewer, is 6.5% up from 2020. Can we, is there an explanation for that?
I don't know. I think, did we cover some of this in the enterprise meeting?
I believe we did, and Jeff, please step in. Mike, please step in if you feel the need. But there are two changes to the enterprise budgets centered around salary that cause that increase. That's the addition of an employee and then additional salary adjustments. So
Okay.
those are covered in that.
That was a total of about 32,000.
And we're able
Okay.
to cover that with our rates based on our current rates.
Right.
Okay,
So, but if we go back to administration, I mean, there's $88,000 that a savings from administration from 20 to 21. The splits between enterprise and general account was 1/3 last year and 1/3 this year to enterprise, and so it's like something. I'd go back to what Nancy said. The $88,000 basically is absorbing something else in the overall general budget. That's my observation. So
just that 88,000 is probably is in the general fund. Part of that is in the enterprise fund.
I can help with a little bit more detail on that, Mike.
All right.
So the numbers between the mayor's and clerk's accounts in the general fund, which are the only two budgets in the general fund that are actually reduced from their 2020 original budgeted amounts, are at a reduction of approximately $38,000. So if there's a difference of 80 or so, there's 50,000 that is, sure, part of it is in the enterprise budget. The rest of it is different changes throughout other budgets in the general fund. But as far as administrative costs are concerned, the mayor's and clerk's funds are reduced and reflect as reduced in the general fund budget.
yeah, I wanted to point out, I mean, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing.
Right.
But the question is, that's absorbing additional expenses and other accounts across the way. I mean, police
That's
went
right.
6%, and salaries and benefit, it went up 6%. And I didn't recall that we had 15 officers altogether. I thought we had, five full-time and 7 part-time. So I guess I must have missed something.
I don't know.
I'm seeing 6 full-time and 9 part-time.
I
That's
don't
not
know.
correct.
Anyways,
There's
I think
7
we're-
of us full-time and 5 part-time.
I think we're beyond.
And one of the
our ability.
part-time officers is the clerk, mayor's clerk.
Okay, thank you.
If we want to focus on where can we reduce expenses, I think and that's correct, Chief. Thanks for the correction on that. But I think we need to focus on areas where we can reduce. The salaries are there, and I have not had a chance to even look at this. Are there other places where we can actually cut some costs? I think we
should reduce the mayor's salary.
yeah, and
All right, I'll take a 50% cut, but no
More than that.
more. No
same
more
with
than that.
all of council, right? So all I've really got here that we can try to do longer term throughout the year, try to find some better deals on various contracts or services, things that we might be able to investigate and reduce cost. Some other things were 2 less park benches and move the snow plow over to VPGI fund or to not VPGI, to the state highway funds. snowplow goes over there, so that's 6,000. I have not captured very much else, I don't think. Is there anything I've missed, David or Wally? Were you taking notes too?
And that is the correct total, 8971 to date.
Okay. And I really, through this exercise, what I've determined, especially talking to Tom Alderfer, who I worked more closely with than any of the other people, they have done their best for the past many years to try to make sure that we keep our budgets as close as we can and minimize expenses as much as possible. And through just their own kind of hard work and inventiveness, in Tom's case, making different parts work, robbing from a broken vehicle to make an existing vehicle work. They've done a real service to the village with minimal amount of money and no revenue increase, so to speak. So I feel good about the budgets that they've put together. And I don't really feel that bad that we haven't been able to find $50,000, because I beat it up and looked for it. I couldn't find it without, again, further cutting services. This just, to me, points to the idea that we have to have a revenue increase after, Don, how many years has it been since there's been a levy increase?
2012 was our last revenue increase. Will, I think you were there for it.
Okay.
Was it a 1.5 mil increase in
was.
2012?
Yes,
1.5.
yeah.
So 1.5 is what, about 150,000
That's about what it would bring in now.
now? Okay. So, we've done some things to help relieve the general fund a little bit, such as we asked the residents to reimburse for the trash. That helped us. But now we're at this point again where expenses have increased revenue. And without a revenue increase, I don't know how we make it balance and keep the same services to the village. I certainly don't want our beautiful park central to the village to go the way of the green belts and not get mowed, or our tree canopy not be maintained. There are many things we just need to keep up. So
When is the next time we can try to get a special levy?
that I
May.
do not know.
May.
In May? Okay.
I'm not sure we could get it done that quickly, but yes, May, in theory, we could put it on the ballot. Otherwise, we probably should look towards November.
Okay.
Well,
realistically.
it could be done in May, but council would have to get on it.
Yeah. So November possibly, and that's a more normal election cycle, and lets everyone be aware. And then the only other option is wait and try to do an additional levy in 2022 when our other levy comes up, but that puts us further behind. So not making the decision tonight, but I think we should look at November potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to start the conversation
Right.
and make a decision, and start deciding when we want a revenue increase to be put out to our residents. Typically, the levies have always been on the ballots in the even years, and the elections for council and the mayor and the clerk and treasurer have been in the odd years. I don't know if having a levy along with the elections would confuse people or not.
Well, we can talk about that. For tonight's business, are we comfortable recommending this budget to council minus the almost $9,000 in cuts we were able to find? Is there a motion?
And
that we
in
recommend?
agreeing, let me stop you guys. In agreeing to use the reserves to cover the deficit.
Mike, I think it goes without saying that we would have to use the reserves to cover the budget. We can spell that out if you like.
They offer that we should call them the carryover balance. That's the auditor's term. And it's typical for every community in Ohio
Yes.
to look at their carryover balance, the savings from the year prior, and apply it to operations in the forthcoming year.
Okay, well, that's not uncommon, I agree. I want to make sure we retain focus on the idea that our revenues should match, at least match our expenses going out. If you rely on the carry forward will not be there eventually. So that's that. I don't want to lose focus on that.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all about that, but
Okay, all right.
for the purpose
So-
of minutes.
So what are we talking about hitting the reserves? How much?
It would be, well, it'll be in the neighborhood of $90,000 based on our math, but we're expecting the 54,000 to come in.
Right.
So 36 to 37.
Right. Now, our paperwork is going to say 90,000 because we have to use the number that the auditor gives us.
Right. Right.
And that's the way we've done it in the past.
Can we get any PPP money?
It's what, Alan?
Can we get any government money, PPP money? Corona.
Yeah, we need more PPP money. Is there a motion to recommend then the budget as adjusted to council?
So moved.
Mike, this is a clerical question, Mike. We're talking about a $53,000 deficit, are we then? Assuming we receive the 37,000 to offset.
I think that number will
No.
be closer to $40,000, $38,000.
We're anticipating, well, currently let me start from the beginning. Before we began the process this evening, we had approximately a $100,000 deficit. The holdback is somewhere in the neighborhood of $53,000. Now this is napkin math, so
Right.
don't hold it to me. Resulting in a gap of about $46,000. Came up with, I have 9,800 or
Yes.
8,900, sorry, in reductions for a gap of about 37,000.
Okay.
9,000.
Yeah, not 9,000. You meant
Yeah,
9,000.
I corrected that. I switched them. Yeah, it's 89.
89. Okay. So Maryland, roughly $37,000. Okay.
I just want to know what I'm voting on. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Very good. So all in favor of that, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. No opposition, okay. So we'll recommend this to council. David will adjust the paperwork and we'll have an ordinance for February.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
Mike Bessel, can I ask a big picture question while we still have Wally and David?
Sure.
Is there, I guess Wally as the elder spokesman, do you, going down the road here as we go into this new decade, do you see anywhere where we can save on the new hires on the pension program? Is there any, in the private sector now, everyone's going to 401k. Pensions aren't offered anymore, basically at every new company. Is there any option for a Glendale?
Those are,
That's a great question, Will. If the state of Ohio would change the state law, then yes, but currently we are required to put our employees in their respective pensions, whether it's police, fire, or Ohio public entity pool. But currently we're required, and if that ever changes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So any
Mike, I'd like to emphasize that there are a few follow-ups that I am anticipating further information on clarity. One was the sick pay buyback, whether or not that's still going forward and to what extent the village is contractually or otherwise statutorily obligated. The other was the turnout gear and the communication devices.
Radio.
The radios, yes. Thank you, Nancy. In the fire department.
Okay,
Yes, okay.
got it.
There are a couple of more little things that we may have taken notes of, but putting this forward to council hopefully will not end the conversation.
No.
Because I think if there is a levy going to the public, we'll need to really explain the need for it, and not just simply say, maintain the services that we have. We are looking at economic uncertainties, and I cannot emphasize that enough. We're also looking at real estate taxes going up for many people, and probably income taxes going up for many people to some extent. And some of us still live on fixed incomes. So with that having been said, I think we really have to do a bit more to make the case for a levy.
Okay, understood.
Thank you.
Well said. Is
Hey,
there-
Mike Bessel, one more thing to,
Okay,
well, not on what we just passed, not on the budget we just passed, but to follow up Marilyn there, I just back of the napkin was 14.6, sorry, 14,600 in sick pay buyback.
okay,
So, and I'm remembering now in 2012 was when we did the 1.5 levy hike.
okay.
We did some substantial cuts that year. I mean, big time budget
Yes.
cuts.
Yes.
2012, 13. I remember the vacation days we let you cash out. We let the employees cash out if they didn't use vacation days. But I'm certain the sick pay, we said, you get your sick days, but we weren't going to do any more. We weren't going to do any more cash outs if they didn't use them. So,
Will, let's take that forward and consider how that's being utilized. I think in some situations it's more beneficial to the village, and it probably helps in juggling employee hours. But let's investigate it, but let's not say we're cutting it out.
okay.
It is something that is covered by an ordinance. So we will pull copies of that and distribute that. But it is an employee benefit that has been provided to the employees through an ordinance. And to my knowledge, has not experienced an interruption in, I mean, Dave Warman's shaking his head. So obviously it's been the last 30 years or so.
Yeah, it's never been cut.
Let's
All right,
look into it. Let's look into it.
Okay.
All right.
One thing I'd like to find out then before, at the very beginning, when we take that up, is what do other communities in our area do about sick pay buyback? And let's just see how they're, if we're an outlier, if we're the only ones doing it, then that will be one thing. If on the other hand, if we remove it, we'd be turn into an outlier, then that's another story. Because we want to keep our good employees.
Hey, Mayor, are you still able to get in touch with Loretta Roque? Because she was very upset at council because we passed it. She was very upset in a meeting with us about.
If whatever was
That may
passed,
be,
there'll an ordinance
I
and
think
there'll be
we
a
have some very good sources within the Hamilton County municipal
They never did
communities
that,
to survey, do quick surveys and find out what other communities are doing. So whatever Loretta might have thought about it, I think we can make our own decision at this point.
I mean, what I mean on that is we passed it. And then so she was upset, but because Dave said there was David said there was an ordinance that we kept it in. I sure don't recall that.
Well, if there is an ordinance,
I don't know about
we'll
it.
be able to find it.
Yeah.
And we'll look at it. We'll move forward from there.
Will, what year do you think, council?
I believe it was a 2012 vote, but we didn't enact it until 2013 because it was considered so drastic.
Okay, we have great minutes and a great file of ordinances. We can do the review with David tomorrow. We'll help out.
Okay.
Before we leave, can I just quickly say, Chief, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Nancy, you hit your hand up.
Speaking of that,
Thank you.
I just got a flash on my phone that Hamilton County is now at a level 4 purple public emergency.
Oh, for the COVID?
COVID, the only county out of 88,
Wow.
Right.
Okay,
purple.
I surely will say this. I hope nobody gets it. It's horrible.
we're on, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Wally, there is also communications information coming out from various organizations and entities
Yeah.
to inform people where they can go online and sign up to receive the COVID vaccination. Will the village be putting out information?
Well, it's funny you should
tomorrow?
mention that. I just sent, David and I just sent Chuck Fortmeyer a notice from Hamilton County on various stages of who gets a vaccine and when. And they're on tier A as in Adam right now. And next week they go to B as in Baker tier, which is for people that are in their 60s, I believe, 65. So we sent that to Chuck Fortmeyer. He'll post that on the website, on the
But
newsletter.
let's make sure that what he posts contains the registration, the link to the registration form as well. Because
It does.
you don't have to be in the age group to register.
I was just about to say, additionally, we asked them to post, Mayor Lofty gave us a registration link yesterday. So we asked them to post that as well, that you can pre-register, get your name in line.
Mhm.
So both those things will go out Friday.
Would he
Thank
also
you.
mention, the purple status?
I don't have that data, so I'll get that from the fire chief tomorrow. We get that included.
Well, I can send you what was sent out from the county.
Oh, please do.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of your input and hard work.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
That was nice
Now
to
that we
done.
are adjourned, we will not be meeting tomorrow afternoon.
We will not need to meet tomorrow afternoon. You get your day off. We won't buy it back from you though. We won't buy it back.
I was gonna say, can I sell that time,
No,
back to the
no.
village?
You can't.
Yeah, right.
They're gonna take that.
I'd,
They're gonna take
I'd like
that.
to thank our department heads who stuck around for this meeting to answer
Yes.
questions and provide insight on their budgets.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well
I
done.
hope, Dave, you're feeling better. It looks like you're okay.
Good.
Other than being on an inhaler, I feel better. So I don't know what's going on there, but I'll be back shortly. I took a test yesterday. Hopefully it comes back negative. So
We'll
Okay.
take
I'm going nuts sitting here.
Do you
Well,
read any
Dave,
books?
Dave, have you heard anything from Officer Rocks?
The only thing that I've heard is he is meeting with some additional doctors to get some more clarity on what's going on. And